So this week's podcast, we meet Glenn from the CAA, the Civil Aviation Authority. Now, Glenn has got a massive job looking after all sorts of elements of safety and regulation at the CAA, and he tells us a little bit about that. He's also an operating captain, so he has huge experience, and you should find this super reassuring to understand what these regulatory authorities do to keep us all safe. Welcome, Glenn Bradley. I knew I was going to stuff it up. It's the R's and the L's. Welcome to the session.
Thank you very much. Thanks for inviting me.
Oh, thank you. So, Glenn, for people who will be looking at, okay, what does Glenn do? Tell us a little bit about yourself, what you do, background, that sort of stuff.
Okay, brilliant. So, my role is Head of Flight Operations here at the UK Civil Aviation Authority. Like, what that means is I'm responsible for the oversight of all commercial flying in the UK.
Yeah.
I'm responsible for the oversight of all commercial flying training in the UK, and I'm accountable for flight crew licensing, so pilot license. Yeah. So it's a fairly big remit.
Yeah.
About 120 people that help perform all that function and play their part in that, and a lot of expertise and knowledge to help me achieve that.
Awesome. So you're definitely the right man to talk to. So a lot of people listening might have heard a bit about the CAA, and that they may have heard the equivalent, because we have listeners in the US and Australia and all sorts of places. So they'll have their own equivalent version. But maybe you could just give us a bit of a snapshot of what the CAA exists to do.
Okay, so the CAA is Civil Aviation Authority, is the UK's national aviation regulator, the safety regulator. So we basically make sure that all flying is safe. So that's the safety group we have. We make sure it's secure. So we have an aviation security department, and we also make sure that consumers are protected. So we have a consumer markets group that makes sure that your rights are protected and people understand what they're entitled to and how they're protected when they fly from a commercial point of view.
Understood. Yeah. Okay. So what about you, Glenn? What's your... I'm getting a pilot vibe off you, but I could be wrong.
Yeah, you picked it up. Yes, I'm a pilot by trade. In fact, I still am. So I'm probably slightly biased here, but I think I've had had the best career so far. So I left university with a degree in mechanical engineering.
Yeah.
And decided I want to fly. So my father flew light aeroplanes, and he did a little bit of time in the Air Force. So it was always there at the back of my mind, an involvement with aviation.
Yeah.
And when I got to the end of university, I both applied to the Air Force and applied to British Airways, because they just started up their cadet scheme. And BA came back and said, this was back in 1986, they said, we've delayed the cadet scheme by a year. And the Air Force said, you're in. So I went off into the Air Force in 1987, spent 12 years there, had a fantastic time, mainly flying Tornado GR1s, and did lots of interesting things, went to wonderful places in the world, had a fantastic time with a great bunch of people. And then with an option to leave after 12 years, I left and joined the airlines.
Right.
So I started with an airline called GB Airways. It's great.
Oh, yeah, I remember them. Yes. Yeah.
Great to join an airline that's got your own initials in it. So I thought that was a good thing. So, and they lived in the old 1930s original Gatwick Airport terminal next door to the aviation house building at the CAA here. So I was there for 10 years. I flew 737s initially, and we converted the whole airline into Airbus A320s and 321s.
Yeah.
I got my command there. I did a management job there as flight manager technical, various other bits and pieces. And we were bought out in 2008 by easyJet. So I moved across there as a management pilot. So I carried on flying and did a safety management job. Also became a training captain there as well.
Okay.
Spent 10 years at easyJet doing that, ending up there as most of the time there as head of aircraft operations. And then left there in 2017 to join the CAA. So I've been here for 8 years now. and having a great time. And the fascinating thing with this role is the scope of the role. So having been in short-haul Airbus scheduled operations for 20 years, all of a sudden, your eyes are open to the whole scale of commercial operations in the UK, and it's quite fascinating. But as I said, I'm a pilot and the training captain, so I still fly. The pilots in the CAA still fly.
Oh, do you?
Times a month.
Okay. So you have to stay current.
Stay current and go and fly, which is great because you need the currency and credibility to be able to do the role. So you're talking to aviation professionals on a level playing field, and it keeps you up to speed with what's going on in the world, how the system's operating, how the whole infrastructure is working. So that's a great side of the job. It gives it a little bit more variety and keeps everybody current. So
brilliant. So you get to escape from the office as well for a bit.
Exactly. Yeah, you can see all the stuff you sit there talking about or emailing about.
So quite an interesting career, isn't it? You've had like chunks, like 12 years, 10 years. It's like that,
Exactly.
You properly invest. So what made you leave the forces and go to the civil aviation route?
So I joined on what's called a permanent commission, which is you signed up for 16 years, but as a graduate, you have an option to leave at 12. So you come at that. At what point am I going to start my second career? Is it after 12 years or 16 years? And so I'd kind of done almost everything I wanted to do in the Air Force. And there wasn't enough left wanted to do to stay for another 4 years. So I just kind of picked that point and left, and it worked out perfectly. I landed on my feet. It's the aviation world is very cyclic, the airline industry. So I just happened to hit the right point on the cycle, and it's worked well. So
yeah, interesting. So I remember GB. I didn't know what happened to them. I thought they were kind of part of British Airways. So that was in my mind. Did I make that up?
No, we were a British Airways franchise. So we basically flew in British Airways colours, the cabin crew in British Airways uniforms, British Airways flight numbers, mainly out of Gatwick, some Heathrow and some Manchester, to holiday destinations. So fill in that gap.
So how was it sort of transitioning then to when easyJet acquired them? What was there a significant change in the way you operated?
The ways you're operating, there's lots of different ways to fly an Airbus aircraft. So there's subtle differences, and we had to manage a process to convert everybody from one to the other. I think the biggest thing was you're going from an airline that was 16 aircraft big, that was family owned. Everybody knew each other. It was a nice place to work.
Yeah.
Into an organisation that was big and growing by the day.
Yes.
And expanding quickly, where because of that, there's lots of opportunities. Lots of people decided to go and work around Europe, and there were lots of opportunities job-wise, training and management and all the rest of it. But I think with a large organisation, it becomes a bit more impersonal. So people would tell you from GB that they felt more like a number than a name.
Yeah.
Once they'd got used to that culture, then they can take advantage of the opportunities that they presented themselves. And it was a great time and a great place to work. It still is.
So when you're flying, who are you flying for? When you
I fly for easyJet still.
Oh, right, okay. So I didn't know that's how it works. So I just assumed, only obviously, that when you joined the CAA, particularly as you got quite a sizable job by the sound of it, that was you hung up your wings and How does that work then? Because that sounds like quite a lot to balance.
It is. I only get to fly about a couple of times a month. Which it's enough to keep me going. See, our rules are we fly with the training captain, so we're kind of looked after from that perspective. We have people flying with all the major airlines, doing long haul and short haul on different types, just so we've got those kind of touch points with the whole industry at different levels and stuff. But as I say, it keeps people interested and engaged in the whole thing.
I guess it keeps you like you're not in some sort of ivory tower, are you? Coming up with policies and stuff without, you've got to live with them as well, haven't you? And I guess when you fly, your colleagues will know you belong to the dark side. That's a joke.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Well, I think that there is that kind of perception. I mean, everybody has a view on the CAA in the aviation industry, but being a pilot is quite a leveler. You have to go in the simulator twice a year to be tested and trained. And so it doesn't really matter who you are, what you are. You still have to be able to do the job, and which it keeps everybody safe and comfortable and happy that the right things are happening. It's not just the privilege of being at the CAA.
No, I find there's so many things I want to ask you, Glenn, because you've featured lots of things. So I'm trying to think now, what was the nervous fire I want to know? So this thing about having like people who are current pilots, but they're also in this area, is that like across the board, or do you have to give up at any point?
At the moment, I can only fly commercially until I'm 65, and that's the same across the board. But remember, within an airline, airlines will have management pilots that are doing the same thing, flying, a couple of times a month. That's all. So that's quite normal.
And what made you go for? Because all the places you've worked. So, for example, you've never just been a pilot. I mean, you've gone and you've taken positions where it's like you're looking after other pilots in some capacity. What's that about then? You just sort of, do you like?
I'm not sure. It was. I don't know. I guess there's something that's kind of driving individuals, whatever you do. And what I say with the airline industry, you either do something at work to do more, become a training captain or management or safety, or you do something outside.
Yes.
And I kind of threw everything into doing that in management. And people look at me, people say, "How could you do that? You must be mad," and all those sort of things. And but I don't know. I think it's a personal thing where I enjoy the variety. I like the kind of pace of things. It's probably not a surprise that I get quite heavily involved with crisis management as well. So it's just kind of I guess it's just the way I'm wired. So
yeah, I'd like to get into that a bit. I was thinking that when I've seen pilots, they get promoted, you get to the captain, and then you're like, what do you do next? So for some, that's enough for them, and they do that, and then they get their kicks elsewhere. They have their little side hustles, don't they? You see lots of pilots and cabin crew do that. But you just expanded, because I guess once you've done a job for a while, you've kind of got it, and then it's nice to be able to sort of contribute. So I guess what I'd like to think would be really interesting, but again, put the nervous flyer's hat on, is to think, what's your sort of day-to-day sort of stuff that you would be doing that they would find interesting?
They would find interesting as a challenge. I think just going back to the previous point about why I do it, I think what drives me is I want to be able to make a difference, which is why I was very happy to come and work here at the CAA. So worked on lots of things in lots of different airlines to help improve it. But now I feel I'm in a position where I can influence the wider system. So from a day-to-day perspective, I mean, the other thing that drives me is the variety. So I always tell people, so what is it about your job? And so there isn't a day goes past where I don't get asked a question and I've got no idea where to start finding the answer. So that's could be an interesting challenge. But there's a lot of process involved. So weekly, monthly cycles of meetings and safety meetings and safety promotion and information. So there's a lot of that going on. At my level in the business, there's a lot of running the business as well. We're a big team of 120 people. Running that and helping organise not just flight operations, but the wider safety and airspace regulation group, SARG, that we have. So in the leadership team for that. So there's a lot of just being part of a business and keeping that turning over. So be it finance or recruitment or whatever it happens to be, just keeping all that going. Hence there's lots and lots of variety. And it's also having a strong team underneath you that are running the day-to-day operational side of things. The oversight that we do of the entities that we approve and the training organisations and the examining stuff we do and the testing the simulators. There's lots of different threads to what we do.
Yeah, I bet. I've always wondered how all the different organisations sort of overlap. So like you with the JA, I don't know if it's still called the JA, and ESA, and all IATA, and all these different sort of acronyms, I guess. How's that all work?
It is quite complicated. So without a lesson in being a regulator, member states all sign up what's called the Chicago Convention, which is held with a branch of the United Nations called International Civil Aviation Organization.
Okay.
So that that gives us the kind of the right to be a national aviation authority, and then we have to have the rules and regulations that are appropriate to that. So that's the kind of international club. So if you're part of that, there's a kind of a mutual acceptance. Everybody, if we approve somebody to fly a commercial aircraft with qualified pilots, then another country will accept that.
Right.
There's going to be some checks and bits and pieces, and we do some checks just to validate that. But that's the fundamental part of you being on an international, global aviation system. We used to be part, when we were in the EU, used to be part of the EASA, which is the European Aviation Safety Agency. And that, whilst it was part of 28 states at the time, they're not a regulator as such. They're just a group of regulators that are using the same rule set that they all feed into.
Right.
So there's mutual acceptance across, because they're all doing the same thing, the same way, using the same rules and accepting that. So coming out of the EU has complicated that, because whilst we have a rule set that looks very similar, we are not part of that group anymore. But saying that, the UK certainly was the fourth largest aviation sector in the world. So we've always had a large global footprint. We've got a huge aviation history, and well respected in that from that point of view. So we've got a seat at the table with all the major players, and those relationships are very strong with America and Australia and Canada, and within Europe as well. So it's all part of a kind of an international system that all works together for mutual benefit and mutual safety.
That's good to know, because one of the things that nervous flyers worry about is like, where is it safe to fly, and which airlines are safe and things like that. And so I've always, I do our best to sort of explain it, but maybe something around how you kind of the standards that you meet, how's that enforced? So between you and, say, the FAA, for example.
Okay, so from an international perspective, if somebody wants to fly into the UK, they have to go through a kind of an acceptance process with us to make sure that they're meeting our requirements as well as the international ones. So it's because obviously there's a risk, so potential risk with them flying into our airspace. So we do a process to give them a third country approval to let them operate into our airspace.
Yes.
There are places in the world that don't meet the bar, and they go on what's called the air safety list, which is basically a list of airlines or states that we will not allow to fly into the UK.
Right.
And it's the government that publishes that. It's on their website. These are the places these are the airlines that are not allowed, or states that are not allowed to fly into the UK. So they haven't met that bar that's acceptable to us.
Yeah. So it's not like someone can just sneak in. They've got
no. No, it's not a free fall. They have to meet that. Have to meet a certain standard. So.
Well, that's super reassuring. So when you get on an aircraft, so if you go out to the US, or you go and you turn up at the airport, they swap it out. It's not the airline you're expecting. It's a wet lease or something. What thoughts go through your head in terms of safety, or if any?
Okay, so that's a really good example. So, for example, a wet leased aircraft, that aircraft would have had to meet the safety standards of the authority that they're registered in, to be able to operate internationally. But on top of that, the airline that's leasing them in has to do an equivalent safety check to make sure that they meet their standards as well.
Right.
So they've kind of got two hurdles they have to jump over to meet that requirement. And so that's how we guarantee the equivalence of safety. You might see that when you go on holiday and it's an aircraft that's not from the UK, but if you booked it through UK airline, they've had to meet those safety requirements.
That's great. A lot of people worry about that, but that's a question that comes up all the time. So how about this as a question? So I'm a billionaire. I'm not, obviously. I'm Trump or Musk or someone. I want to start up Trump Airlines in the UK. How easy or difficult would that be to do?
If you're a billionaire and you point that money in the right direction, it's not difficult. There's a lot you have to go through. So you obviously what you have to do is apply to us. There's two requirements you have to meet. One is to achieve the requirements to get what's called an air operator certificate.
Yeah.
But that's all the safety checks and make sure you've got a management system, the right people, manuals, training, all those sort of things. And also an operator's license. And that's from the commercial side of the CAA. And that's to make sure you've got a business plan and funding. Because obviously, if you're going to sell seats on an aircraft to passengers, they need to know that you're not going to go out of business the next day. So there's economic requirements you have to meet from that side as well. So basically, there's two work strands that you come in. So you'd apply to us, we'd do a pre-application meeting just to make sure that you're not actually a billionaire and you're just having a flight of fancy, excuse the pun. So if you get through that, then you apply and we give you some dedicated inspection surveyor to make sure that your safety plan and your manuals, the aircraft, and a surveyor that makes sure the aircraft you're going to have is going to be serviceable, and you've got all the maintenance plans and people in place to actually do that. So if you turn up tomorrow with lots of money and a good plan, if it was really, really good, with the following wind, you could probably get up and running in about 6 months.
Really?
It's about a year. Yeah.
Yeah.
The other way is to go and buy an airline from somewhere and then convert it to what you want to do, and that's probably more like 3 to 6 months. And some operators do that; they'll buy out somebody else and change either the aircraft or where they're going and those sort of things. Because you've got the building blocks there of the people and the management structure and the manuals and bits and pieces. So it's not a quick process.
No, I was going to say, because I remember in Branson set up, that was a matter of, I think he had this idea, and then I think it was about 3 to 6 months he did his first Miami flight, or whichever one it was. Remarkable, really, but it's still a lot to go through. Even if you've got the money, you've still got to have a decent plan. People are going to inspect you. You can't just rock up and do what you like.
Absolutely. And the way we do that, I mean, obviously the bar is kind of quite high, especially when you're starting up, because we've got no background, we've got no assurance. If you've been operating the airline for 10 years, we know how you do business, we know how you manage yourselves. But from scratch, it's like we have to have a lot of reassurance that you've got all the right people, the right experience, and it's going to work.
So thank you for that. So in terms of the ones that are kind of established, so if you had like your BAs and Virgins, Qantas, all these sort of massive airlines that have been around for ages, if they're in the UK space, what's the sort of ongoing stuff that the CAA would do to make sure that they're sort of playing by the rules?
Well, for the non-UK operators,
well, for any of them really, just like what sort of things can you do or do you do?
Well, so for the airlines that in the UK that we give an approval to an air operator certificate, and we do an audit cycle. So we oversee them. So we go and make sure that what they've got in place is actually working.
Yeah.
And actually, the way it's structured, they have to have a compliance monitoring system. So they're supposed to monitor themselves.
Right.
So most of what we do is to go in to make sure that their monitoring system is actually telling them the right thing, and they are taking the right action. So if their system sees a problem, it identifies it and corrects it, and then measures if that's been effective or not. So we do that on a kind of regular cycle. And we look at all the aspects, not just the operations and flight operations, the training, cabin safety, ground safety, dangerous goods, all the various aspects in flight ops. And it's similar from the airworthiness side as well. So we do that for the non-UK operators. They have to do this third country approval process to make sure that they meet the same safety standards that are required, and we do regular oversight of that as well. And there's also what's called the safety assurance of foreign aircraft, so the SAFA program,
right?
Where we'll send inspectors out and they'll go and check on a bit of a kind of a spot check on aircraft as they appear at various airports around the UK. And we feed into a wider program on that. We still feed into the European program on SAFA. So we know airlines have a score of how good they are and what problems they have, which is visible to everyone. So
that's interesting. So you could you have an audit plan, but could you just literally go, right, let's go and jump on this airline, just turn up in the train centre or go on their flights? Can you do that sort of stuff?
Yep. We can do unannounced audits and just turn up and do that. I mean, part of the normal oversight cycle, we do checks on their training, checks on their flights. So we'll go and sit on the flight and watch them operate. Yeah, and we can do that unannounced if required as well. So
yeah, terrifying. What are they like when you turn up? It's like, oh no.
You get a mixed reaction. So if people have seen it before, they're normally okay and understand. If it's for the first time, it's a bit worrying. And this is one of the things that, because of the regulator, we carry that stigma with us, and actually we don't want to. If you just tell us everything, you're open with us, just relax, do what you normally do, and let us see that and evaluate it. That's much more useful than either trying to put on a show or being worried about it. We understand how the system works. We've all been in industry. We've all been on the other side of the fence. So it's just seeing how it really is rather than what you're trying to demonstrate the good bits are. Because to be honest, we can see through that. We just want people to do what they normally do and let's take a view on that.
Yeah, I can imagine that. Because when you I don't know if it's the same for you, but if I'm typing something and someone stands behind me, I turn into an idiot. I can't type anything. And I think, how much those pilots or they feel when you sort of sat there? I mean, I guess you observed the flight. They must have some tremendous poise under pressure to just kind of ignore you almost,
So yes and no. Somebody watching you always puts you under pressure, and there's a different dynamic there. But pilots from day one have been tested, and they're used to people sitting there. They get exams, sat in the simulator with somebody watching them twice a year. So after the initial bit, somebody's watching me, you can tend to block them out and just do what you normally do, which is good. That's part. You get kind of used to that because people say, doesn't it put you off? And our job, of course, is to put them at ease as well. So just do what you normally do. Don't change anything. Don't do anything different because we're here. Just ideally pretend we're not here. So
yes. So if who audits the auditors? So there's. You must have some accountability to somebody else. How does that work?
Well, as I said before, we are a signatory to Chicago Convention, so ICAO, International Civil Aviation Organization. So they go around and audit all the national authorities.
Okay.
And it's a few years in between those. And we went through one of those a few years ago, and did particularly well. We were very pleased with our result on that one. A lot of work involved in it because obviously it was post EU exit, so there was a lot of in-house stuff we needed to sort out and separated. But yeah, we're pleased with how that went.
That must have been a right pain in the butt, leaving needed, because I know some pilots who've had a certain. So, for example, one of our colleagues, guy works with Lovefly. He's a training captain, but he also goes in the sim and does the testing of the pilots and stuff. And there was he had to get a whole new thing. So like literally the week before, he could test all sorts of different people. Now he can only do it if it's like a UK version. He has to then go and do this other training again because of it. So I thought, crikey, if you scale that up, it must have been quite a lot of work for you all.
Yeah, it was a lot. It was in some ways it was a good exercise post the EU exit to have to do all those things, and but there's a lot of work involved. But as I said, the same when we look at people, we just want to see you as you are normally.
Yeah.
So instead of kind of papering over the cracks, we did the job properly, which is then put us in good stead after that. So
yeah. So one of the things that a lot of nervous flyers particularly like is this kind of like no single point of failure, the just culture, and all that sort of no blame, all that type of stuff, all the human factors things that have come in. And I wondered, with your kind of you've got a lot of experience in different places, what sort of things should nervous flyers think about or be reassured to know that would help them thinking about, well, just with your brain. What does your brain know?
Right. So the safety culture completely underpins how we do everything in aviation, and without that, it doesn't work. You still see some other industries, something goes wrong, somebody does something wrong, they get sacked, and the system doesn't learn from it. And we're always praised in aviation for being a learning organization. Now, it's not perfect. It's a long way from perfect, but that's the the direction travel. That's our North Star. We need to learn from when things go wrong. So very quickly, people want to blame. You see aircraft accidents recently. Whose fault was it? What we're saying.
Yeah.
No, we need to learn how not to do this again, because we can't stop that happening after it's happened, but we can stop it happening to the next one.
Yeah.
And it's a mindset that pilots get taught from day one. It's about just culture. So if something goes wrong or almost goes wrong, if you report it, everybody else gets to learn from it. If you've made a mistake, that is a mistake, if you report it, then we all learn from it. Sometimes it might mean that it might be a competency thing. You might need some retraining to help you so you don't put in that situation again. It might be that everybody needs a bit of upskilling or education or safety promotion so that everybody understands it. There is a line. This is the difference between just culture and no blame culture. No blame culture is you put your hands up and say, I'm terribly sorry, I did that wrong, and there's no blame. And just culture, it does cater for where people deliberately, willfully do something wrong or dangerous. And you can cope with them, deal with them in an appropriate fashion. So if somebody's out there to do something wrong or deliberately does something bad, then you can manage that. But the underlying thing is being open and honest, so everybody can learn and share from that. And I think the other thing, which was still evolving in aviation, because it tends to be that we look at all the things that have gone wrong. We also need to focus on what went right.
Yes.
There's lots of really, really good stuff happening day in, day out. And because it doesn't end up as something bad, nobody learns from it. And this is one of the lovely things of being a training captain and sitting in the back of the simulator. You can watch people do things and learn from them. There's some really clever stuff that goes on. And you talk to training captains, they'll tell you, I learn so much just from watching other people. And that they're the little nuggets and gems that, we need to, take on individually past everybody else. It's that, 5% of stuff that's just done fantastically rather than focusing just on the things that have gone wrong. And we need to do both.
Yeah, it's got an unusual sort of approach. I mean, I know lots of other industries are quite envious of the way that the culture is in commercial aviation. I wonder how you think you've managed to achieve that, to get to the stage now where you can have these things that you talk about.
Yeah, I don't know. I still think aviation has been relatively young, but it's 120 odd years old, 110 years old. So it's, I think it's because the industry always innovates and grows and develops. And to do that successfully, you have to learn from your mistakes. Otherwise, you'd still be flying biplanes that fell apart and made of wood and things. So it's like, because there's that drive for innovation and there's the reward, the more technical development you get, the more efficient, the more effective, more profitable, the underlying thing you can be. So there's that learning culture that goes with that. And that's just not just about how you develop things, it's about how you develop the people and the learning process within that. And that's ongoing the whole time. All these things evolve, how we measure things, how we train people.
Sure.
All those things are evolving all the time.
Well, so what are you like as a passenger then? Can you relax, or are you kind of half flying the aircraft? What happens?
I think there's two sorts of pilots: those that just switch off and relax, and those that want to be doing it themselves and are nervous and are sitting there watching everything. I'm quite relaxed. That's not to say I'm not aware of what's going on, but I'm not sitting there, checking over everything's been done. If I'm on a plane, I'm going somewhere, hopefully somewhere nice, and that's part of the process. So,
and do you ever sort of, I mean, if I said to you, right, I'm going to blindfold you and stick you on an aircraft going somewhere, obviously you've got your passport in the UK, but are there, do you feel like it's so safe that it doesn't really matter who you're on? It wouldn't bother you, or is there certain things you think, oh, it must be this type of aircraft? Do you have any of that?
No, I don't mind what I fly. So and who I fly with. It's all a different experience. And I'd say back to the learning culture, because you've always got that, aviation or pilot thing ticking over in the background where you're looking for things and picking things up and so it's just a different experience. So
Well, thank you for giving a good answer to my terrible question. I got a bit, you saw something out in your mind, you have an idea. I'm going to ask this question, and then it rambled out, and thankfully it ended at some point. And you did me the justice of actually giving me an answer.
Well, safe culture, it's something I talk about a lot, so it's very, very easy to talk about. And just the other thing, I always like to get this in. The key to safety culture is it's led from the top. If you get it right at the top, then the rest of the organisation or the industry follows. If you haven't got that, then it never works properly. So
yeah, I think that's right. We've been lucky to have a couple of CEOs of some COOs of type of airlines and presidents and stuff, and you're absolutely right. And you get that same message through no matter where you sort of ask. It's the same sort of thing. So that's really great to hear. So just a sort of a final kind of mic drop moment then. If someone who's a nervous flyer thinks, okay, I'm not convinced, what would you say to them from your experience, just to sort of like, in a nutshell, this is why you shouldn't be worried about commercial aviation? What would you say to that?
Well, it's kind of cliche, but it is the safest form of transport. If the option was to drive around the M25 on a motorbike, then I'd probably be thinking twice about that. So it's the safest form of transport for lots of different reasons, because it's a learning culture, because of that. The one problem with flying is, a lot of people don't do it very often. So it's an alien environment.
Yeah.
The process of going flying is difficult because you probably have to leave home early or stay overnight somewhere before. You've got to get to the airport. You've got to get through the airport with bags, security checks, check-in, all that sort of stuff, and then get onto the aircraft itself. So a lot of people are already not in a great place by the time they get onto the aircraft. If you could just say, "I'll take you from your home and put you straight on an aircraft," it'd be quite a different experience than process. And that's the and there's something slightly unnatural, putting a couple of hundred people in an aluminium tube at 35,000 feet. That's not a normal environment for everybody. So the stress of other people around you and things going on and strange noises and feelings and bits and pieces. But actually, it is quite normal for us now. Yes. I think if you're an alien landing on the planet, giving it, what on earth are you lot doing? But we've got to a situation where it is the safest form of transport, and there's a lot of learning and development, and still is, to make sure that it stays that way and gets better as well. It's a non-stop learning thing. I think the thing is to try and find a way to detach yourself from the irrational fears. The flying itself is completely safe. Just de-stress from all the stuff that's going on around you to get into the aircraft, and sit back and relax and enjoy the experience, because it's an amazing feeling to be able to be at those heights and see the world from a different perspective and go to nice places. So I always feel sorry for people that hate flying, because it's like, well, you're losing out on so much, or not enjoying what can be a fantastic experience.
Yeah. I've got to just be nosy. Right. Favorite aircraft type? What would yours be? I mean, it could be flown or been in.
Well, I've been flying the Airbus 320 family for 25 years now. So that's something that's my kind of comfort place.
Yeah.
But actually not. If it's a favorite airplane, not as a commercial thing, an old 1930s Tiger Moth is my favorite airplane.
Oh, yeah, fantastic! Yeah, you've flown one of those, have you?
Yes, yeah.
Oh my goodness, that must be such an experience. Like, with all the modern, gizmos you've got now, and you're getting something like that.
Yes, it's and it's obviously it's open cockpit, and you're feeling the elements. It's a very different flying experience, but that's the kind of where that lies. So,
all right, and there's another question then, and I promise I'll let you go. Favorite destination that you've flown into?
Now, there's a good one. Well, a lot of my airline career, I spent either developing procedures or flying into the difficult places like Madeira, Gibraltar, Innsbruck. Probably Gibraltar is one of my favorites. I do like Innsbruck, but Innsbruck can be on a bad day, it's not very fun, but on a beautiful day, it's one of the most spectacular places to go. So one of those two, I think.
Okay. Yeah, I probably will know to clarify with after this podcast when they say it's a, when you pick those airports, saying they're quite, tricky, but I do get it. But when you're used to flying into them, you're probably just it's no big deal to you. But I know some people like get a thing in their head. I've heard Gibraltar's really before, even Luton. Sometimes people, no, is it Leeds? People say, oh, Leeds is meant to be terrible to fly into, and it's just, you guys are used to it though, aren't you?
Well, it is, and any airfield on a bad day can be difficult. So it's but with the difficult airfields, you do extra training for it. There's the extra procedures and things. So I think it's the kind of challenge of being able to go to those places, and it perhaps it's more rewarding having doing that successfully. So
yeah, a lot of things that people worry about, you lot love, So they say, oh, we had to do a go around, and they have a sort of tone in their voice, and every pilot I've ever spoken to says, oh, that's fantastic, get to do our job,
Yes, there's a bit of that. So
Glenn, thank you ever so much for your time. That was super helpful. Is there anything else you think that I should have asked, or that the nervous public would need to know about, or could think about? Because if a better interview would have come up a bit, what of that question should have been?
I'm not sure what else you should have asked, but I think for the nervous flyers, I think it's challenge yourself and go and try and enjoy the experience. Some of the airlines run through flying type courses, and they'll talk you through everything. And I know they've been very successful. A lot of people have been terrified about flying and gone on those, and because they understand the noises in the process and what's going on, it's like that it helps them. They may not be completely rid of their fears, but at least they understand it, and then it's easy to manage. You can understand the process that's going on. So I would take every opportunity you can to try and get through your fears and take advantage of places it can take you, and the experience itself, which is great.
Thank you. Awesome. Thank you very much, Glenn. That's great.
Absolute pleasure. That was fun.